don't know if it's on or not.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order the Planning Commission meeting of today, Monday, August 25th, 2025. Iris, would you please call the roll?
Mitchell,
Here.
Najak,
Here.
Moreno,
Here.
Guinea,
Here.
Fly,
Here.
Twing, Bruce.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Iris. Moving on to item number 3 on tonight's agenda, City Council update. Iris, do we have City Council liaison on the phone? Item number 4 is approval, item 4.1, excuse me, is approval of the minutes from last meeting, August 11th, 2025, a copy of which was distributed to the commissioners beforehand. Commissioners, does anyone have any comments or questions or revisions to the minutes as they are proposed? Okay, I see none. Anyone may make a motion?
Motion to approve?
Second?
I'll second the motion to approve the meeting minutes as written.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone oppose or abstain? Okay, thank you. Okay, item number 5, tonight's agenda is the public comment section. This is to allow community members present to present information or raise an issue not on tonight's hearing or, not on tonight's agenda. Iris, do we have anyone wishing to give testimony?
No.
Thank you. Moving right along, item number 6, the Commission for Citizen Involvement, general updates. I don't think there were any updates for this week that I saw come through. So that'll bring us to item number 7.1 on the agenda. It is the work session for the Foothills District Plan update. This is PP 25-0005, and this is work session number 3. I'll turn it over to Long Range Planning Manager, Mr. Olson.
Thank you, Chair Mitchell. It is working. Okay, that's good. I can't tell by the button color. So yeah, we're here to present to you. This is I think our second official sort of work session dedicated to this project, at least outside of the realm of the HPS, which it is somewhat related. But really, we've come a little bit of a distance in terms of putting together a deliverable. We have sort of just made some progress over the summer with this project in terms of being able to bring a consultant on board and get them under contract and starting to get moving on project meetings and some deliverables to go out and talk about with the general public. So the first of those is a public involvement strategy. So we've put together a document with some ideas about our public involvement strategy for this larger planning effort. And when I say we, I guess I'm talking about the project team. So it includes more than just myself, of course. We have both Will and Jason from our consulting team here at First 40 Feet. So I don't know, Will and Jason, if you want to give a brief introduction.
Yeah, thank you so much.
I can hear you just fine. There we go. Nice.
Can you hear me? Okay, good. Thank you for having us. I appreciate it. This is a really great kickoff, just introducing us and meeting you, and we're going to be meeting a lot and seeing a lot of you, so we're excited about that. My name is Will Grimm with First 40 Feet. I'm a principal and owner of First 40 Feet, urban design, architecture, planning out of Portland. We're excited about this project. We appreciate the opportunity. Wanted to give you an update on the work that we've been doing thus far. Not too much, really, coming up with a plan for the engagement really has been our focus, and because input and insight from the community is high priority here. I think there's lots of time given for that, what we call the discovery phase of just learning as much as we can. So love to give you an update here. We have a ways to go before we actually start putting pen to paper, but we're extroverts. We love to talk to people, so we're going to be doing a lot of that in the next month, 2, 3 months, 4 months maybe, I think. So I want to introduce the team before I hand it over to Jason. First 40 Feet, we're the prime consultant, mainly managing the urban design and plan. ACO Northwest is our economic consultant. They're going to be helping us with financial feasibility as well. Apex Engineering, they'll be doing infrastructure work, existing conditions analysis, et cetera, coordinating with the wastewater treatment facility as well with Jacobs. The DHM, you probably know them. They're in Lake Oswego. They're based out of here. They are our pollsters. They're going to be doing focus groups and also surveys as well. They actually get started soon, very soon, within the next week. They're going to be looking for an audience to have discussions with. And we have Booking Group, who will be helping us with the post amendments, the code, post plan. That doesn't really happen until maybe 11 months out, but they will be involved in the process day one. So we want them involved so they know where we're headed here. DCW will be doing cost estimating. So that's the team. I'm going to hand it over to Jason.
Great.
Thank you.
I'm Jason Graf, also with First 40 Feet, principal. I've been working long enough in Portland that I've engaged the East End redevelopment planning effort and some of the work on Avenue A. And so it's great actually to see the Foothills coming full circle. I know you did a ton of work in 2012 and things have a way of getting in the way, as they often do. And some shifts in movements around the property have kind of set up a new opportunity. And I think we're really excited to have a chance to be a part of that. So it's super exciting that we're going to be working with you on this plan update and creating this framework plan, which is really what we're going to talk about, engagement around the creation of that update document and the time frame that it's going to take to do that, a series of milestones that we've sort of charted out that we're going to try and engage folks. And what I'll basically be showing you is sort of our guidebook. Like these are kind of the rules we've established for engagement and how we're going to engage people and how we communicate about the project. And so there's something that we can refer to and be beholden to as we move through the process. This is an initial map just sort of looking at sort of the impact areas in the study area, and knowing, with the wastewater treatment plan shifting over to another area, that opens up opportunities in a location. We've learned some information about some folks who are already in the Foothills District who may be interested in maybe being a part of the framework as it evolves. And so that's added some additional players that weren't necessarily in the mix early on. So this is our sort of initial mapping at sort of key geographic areas that have specific influences, and we'll be working with groups oriented around these colors as sort of affected stakeholders that we need to help with some decision making. So nothing more than that at the moment, but a nice little colored map for us to all look at. So I mentioned this engagement plan is really our guidebook, and we have some sort of rules and the purpose of the engagement, about this being a community project. And for it to be a community project, it means we need to hear the voices of the people who are not only directly impacted, but also people who use this space and this place. I mean, the park rests along the edge of the waterfront. And so you have users, you have people who are directly affected on site, but you also have the community who are going to move through this space, who are going to be going to this treasured environment, and that thing in between is going to be important to them too. So understanding sort of the values across a broader spectrum helps us to begin to design based on those values, knowing that different folks have different skin in the game and decision-making sort of powers, and we need to understand what those roles are. But in the end, we're really trying to create a collective idea about where the Foothills can go. And so that means taking a variety of different interests and trying to translate that back as like a shared community vision. And that's sort of how you begin things. Like, we're striving to be this thing, and there's probably some guiding principles that are going to help us achieve that. And so we use those as sort of touchstones as we develop concepts, as we refine those, looking back and making sure that we're sort of matching those value statements and that we're thinking about those critical guiding principles that might get us to this great thing. It's also important that we're inclusive and equitable, and quite often that means going to where people are, not forcing people to come to where we are. But again, it's understanding the spectrum of who you need to reach out to, but you need to be flexible on how you do it, and a great way is to meet people where they are. And so that is a part of this inclusive and equitable outreach and engagement process. The other is being consistent and transparent. So what information we share on the website or in a handout or in a newsletter should be the same information we share at a public meeting or or a workshop or an open house so that everyone is getting the same information, that when you go to different groups, you're generally asking the same questions that you asked of the other groups. So you build that continuity, you build that consistency, and hopefully build some transparency around the conversations you're having with a broad number of groups. And then, of course, how are you using the information? And are you presenting it back in a way that's illustrating that you are using the feedback that you're hearing from the community, and you can show where those impact moments are occurring. Again, we're not building consensus around a plan here. In a lot of respects, you're building consent and people accepting that the process has value and they feel that it's fair enough. And I think that's the best we can probably do in a process like this. Our objectives, clear communication. Number one, getting that messaging right from the beginning is really important. That'll kind of start with the website and then sort of how we do outreach efforts, but keeping it simple, keeping it clear, and keeping that message on point throughout the process. Because what I say sort of on day one is going to continue on, and just staying within that message is really important. The other thing is the public. These processes go over a year's time, and geez, who has time to stay involved in that? But you need progress updates. You need a place where you can go and get updated information, be able to look at material that's already been created. So it's important that we do that. The website's going to be a great landing spot for us to create those progress updates and show information that's already been generated for folks who might want to review that as we move along in the process. The other is the assembly of a variety of different groups that are helping us with decision-making. One is the Citizens Advisory Committee, and Erik will give you some background information on that, which has been a pretty big effort to create that group, as well as a Technical Advisory Committee. But the hope is that they are so directly involved in the process that they become ambassadors and they become a voice to the project, to their networks and their circles. And that's really the value of creating a Citizen Advisory Committee and a Technical Advisory Committee, because they can help play that role. So as we have conversations with them, part of our discussion is, you're sort of a player on the team here, and it's great if you can get out to your networks and share what we're doing. The idea is transparency and openness, and having a place for information and consistency will give us some buy-in and accountability. So the engagement plan is setting some high standards, but it gives us a reference to try and meet those. So the process extended out over, about a year's time really breaks up into three sort of key buckets. Project initiation is really this discovery that Will mentioned. It's about understanding the sort of existing inventory and analysis. A lot of work done from 2012, so it's a little bit of catch up, but then we have some new things that we're needing to understand. The wastewater treatment facility is a great example of that. And as we gather that information, that sort of creates a baseline for us to then look at designs and alternatives. But before we even get there, we need to have a discussion with the community about what they value on this acreage, and with these moving pieces and parts, what are we trying to assemble here? And we use the existing analysis to sort of give us a threshold of sort of what we can think about in terms of change, and then give people the opportunity to identify what that change might be, or best look like, or what their biggest fears are, or greatest hopes. This allows us then to establish that vision early on, establish some guiding principles, and then we can put pen to paper. But also, that analysis is giving us opportunities to understand where real challenges are. They may be geographic, topographic. They may be related to utilities such as PGE and other groups. And so there's going to be certain things that sort of manipulate where things can happen, how we can access the site, for instance, huge issue to uncover. So we're working through those things at the same time we're trying to get information from folks about what they'd like to see. So that helps us to understand just how far we can go with things. So we can sort of have a checks and balances with our existing conditions in unison with understanding these values. The result of gathering that information about values leads us into this vision statement, guiding principles, and then we can move into concepts. So we basically take the information we learned from our inventory analysis and what we hear from the community, create opportunities and challenges summary. Like, this is it. This is like, we now have the baseline for how we can begin our work, because we physically know what the challenges are and we generally know what the community values are. So the opportunities and challenges gives us that summary, allows us to move to the next milestone, which is concept plan alternatives, looking at land use and transportation concepts, refining those, and then moving into the framework plans. So I think I sat on one of those a little too long, but I'll move on a little bit quicker here. What it means is across the framework plan, there's really sort of 4 or 5 key milestones. The engagement plan we're in now, generating that effort and understanding who our stakeholders are, and then moving into each of those milestones. Opportunities and constraints being one, looking at concept, alternatives, and then refinements of those. That really is what gets us to that draft framework plan that will come not only to you all, but also to City Council and the community. So those are our key milestones. As we're in that opportunities and constraints, I talked a bit about what we're learning in terms of existing conditions, but we're ramping up. The existing opportunities and constraints is going to have a period where we're reconnecting the community with the project. The fact that it's restarting, promote awareness about that the plan is continuing. It's not starting from scratch, but there are some changes. We want to share the goals and objectives. We want to, as I mentioned, confirm values and build a system for our engagement. So this first phase, we're going to learn a lot about how we do outreach, how well we do it, the venues in which we can do engagement, and that'll get better and refined. But it's kind of building the machine in the first round. So we know we'll get better over time, and we'll look back at what we're doing in previous areas of engagement to get better in that as we move in along the project. Because getting into the concept level plan alternatives is going to be an interesting phase. I think we see the opportunities and challenges as kind of like the wedding phase, where people are like sort of excited, a little bit nervous, but they're not, the pitchforks aren't out yet. Everyone still feels like, maybe we can live with this other family. But once we come back with concepts and alternatives and things begin to look and feel real is really where we begin to see some sort of shifts in behavior around values or what folks might want to see or not see. And we know that's kind of the trickiest part. And as you work through that concept level into getting into some design refinement, there's really a lot of work there. And there's going to be some massaging and working with a variety of different groups to, either keep them close or, try to keep it manageable. So we're pretty wide-eyed about what we're getting into. The engagement plan helps us to have some footing to move forward in that process. Schematic level, that's refinement. That's when we get a plan that we're feeling pretty confident about, and then we can start building the actual document that you would adopt and looking at what are those post-code changes are likely to be, so people are sort of clear what areas of the code are likely to be addressed, or an overlay or whatever that process would be. So it's not like we've done the plan, now we're going to go study code amendments. We've been learning through the process, and we'll have a general outline of the direction we're going around code. So that'll be great for you all, because you're going to weigh in pretty heavily on that piece. And then, of course, the framework plan itself, that's going to be an iterative process. We're going to have a review draft. We're going to run that through our CAC, our TAC, so our Citizen Advisory Committee, Technical Advisory Committee, you as the Planning Commission, City Council, and the LoRa Urban Renewal Group. So there's going to be a lot of touch points, once we have that document that's ready for people prime time, and then it's going to run through a variety of different circles before it's finalized. Our outreach methods, we're sort of working through that with Madison and with the city and understanding what tools you have now. So the project website we know is going to be, there'll be a landing page for this project. You have social media, newsletters. We're learning about sort of key touch points in the community when you typically have engagement and the broader community engagement and how that plays out. So we're trying to figure out how we fit in to sort of your normal cycles, because that's a heck of a lot easier for staff if we're running in systems that are already up and running. It can be simpler, quicker. The community is kind of used to that rhythm. So we're figuring that out, and it's looking good so far. So I think we're good. We're excited about that. There's going to be a variety of different ways that we gather information. So the engagement plan says, here's a bucket of tools that you might be using: surveys, meetings one-on-one, pop-ups, regular community events where you're showing up more as sort of open house for information style. And we'll tailor those for each specific milestone of the engagement. And they may change and shift from one to another. We'll definitely work to build a coalition of community liaisons who are getting the word out, not just through staff and typical city outreach methods, but working through channels that we develop throughout the process. And I mentioned the Community Advisory Committee, the Technical Advisory Committee, you all as the Planning Commission. This is, we call stakeholders here, but really sort of gets into the decision-making body as well. All the engagement we're doing is intended to inform the work that we're doing. But the CAC and the TAC are providing guidance to us. They're sitting in the room and looking at concepts and opportunities and constraints and challenges, and we're gathering feedback from them on the direction we're going or things that we need to look at that we're missing. So they kind of have a special seat at the table, so to speak. You all as a Planning Commission as well are going to have those moments of weighing in deeply and intently on the project, and of course City Council, who will be adopting this, and Laura also are part of that decision-making process. And so our initial messaging, and this is just a summary, we've created sort of three sort of buckets of how we talk about the project, and we're working through that with Madison and others. But we're trying to create a neighborhood here, and an amazing neighborhood on the river. I mean, it's absolutely stunning. We looked at that earlier, aerial, and I mean, I've been here time and time again, and this idea of Avenue A coming through and reaching the river is I think a moment for anyone, whether you've lived in Lake Oswego or you've lived in this area, you've wanted to see that moment. It's almost like you can't wait for those low-hung one-story buildings right at Avenue A to just kind of part ways and you see the river. It's so exciting. Being down in the park, and I've done it a few times this summer, I brought my kids down here. It's just another piece that, I live in Portland and we just don't have that experience. We don't go down to the river. We don't dip our feet in the water very often. And so it's really special. So part of the messaging is how awesome this place is, how incredible this neighborhood could be, and other elements. We are building on past work, new opportunities. We do want to welcome as many voices. As Will says, we're happy to talk to anyone, anywhere. And the more we talk, the more we learn, and the more we can, I think, contribute to something special. And it will come down to the community values, and we do need to lean into that. What are people looking for? What is sort of bearable in their consciousness? And, we're going to tap into that. There'll be a little pushing and pulling, but I think that's pretty normal. And I think if we can lean into what people value, that's where we can come back and we can make some resolution. We can understand trade-offs. But if we're clear about where we think we want to go, that really helps with the conversation. So I will stop now and open it up to you all. I think that's the end. Yeah, I know Eric could definitely give you an update on the Community Advisory Committee if that's a key topic.
Yeah, it's related to community engagement, so I'll just really quickly add on to Jason's presentation here, just a really brief update. So we are planning to bring a resolution to City Council next week, next Tuesday, the 2nd of September, to appoint members to the Community Advisory Committee. So as we decided as a Planning Commission, at least at our last meeting, the representative from the Commission will be Commissioner Najak, but the other members are sort of going to be determined. I know the information, but I can't share it yet because it's not public yet, so I just will keep it to myself. But we have 15 members, including 2 members under the age of 18, 2 non-voting members, Rachel or Commissioner Najak, as well as Mayor Buck will likely be. I guess that's a little bit of a sneak peek at who the City Council representative is, but so it's not exactly a surprise. And yeah, so we have 2 non-voting representatives, as well as folks representing backgrounds like sustainability, sort of transportation or infrastructure expertise, urban design, planning, landscape architecture, these types of fields. Also, residents of the Foothills neighborhood, a representative from the Neighborhood Chairs Committee. I think that covers it, actually, so I'm not going to go on for too much. But so we're going to have 15 folks on there, and we're excited about the quality of candidates that we received through that solicitation. And on the with respect to the Technical Advisory Committee, we are also getting to a point really close to when we can formally establish that, but just trying to sort of cover all the bases. There's a lot of folks that you just sort of get further into exercise and realize we should really reach out to them. So it's just, we don't want to leave anybody out. So essentially, we're getting a really good selection of folks not only from within the city and different departments within the city, but as well as other agencies, somebody from ODOT, somebody from TriMet, somebody from Metro, et cetera. So we have some good representation on that technical advisory committee as well, representative from the trolley consortium, things of that nature. So anyway, that's something that will likely come to City Council later in September, aiming for September 16th. But the overarching message here is that we want to hit the ground running pretty quickly with these committees, and these committees will also have an opportunity to weigh in on this public engagement plan that we're working on today. And so with that, I guess we can formally, stop the presentation and open it up for questions.
I have a quick question. Do you know if there's anyone with DEI
Absolutely.
expertise?
That is the one thing that I did not mention that, of course, I left out. But yes, we will have somebody, as per the resolution, that will come with that background. Yes.
And to sort of follow up on Deanna's question, Commissioner Moreno, how will the city ensure that underrepresented groups, people like youth, low-income households, and renters, are engaged in this process?
Absolutely. We're going to go through what we call our stakeholder identification, and we create this matrix of, we've already kind of done this. We've created an iterative, or we've created an interim list of everyone we need to engage with. And we've been asking the question about, who are additional groups that typically aren't a part of the process that we need to reach out to. So we've kind of got a short list of that. We're going to work through kind of refining what we think that target group is. And then we move into what's the method of engaging that group. Is it high level? Is it one-on-one? And so we'll work, and it may be a variety of different ways. I mean, there may be a list of sort of 3 primary that we focus on. It could be youth, it could be around housing, it could be another topic, which we haven't refined. But the meetings will be set specific to those stakeholders. So we're not predetermining there's one way to engage everyone. We'll tailor it to the right group and extend it over the length of the process that it makes sense. We have an interesting thing with DHM, and this is kind of moving away from your question, but I think as I try to, one of the things you always try to get ahead of is sort of what's the pulse of the community around Foothills and the issues that might inherently be here, and or the things that people really want, because it's wonderful to know things you can build off of. And so how do you get that pulse? How do you reach out to just the broader community to sort of understand what they're thinking about Foothills? DHM has been sort of the tool that we thought would be great to bring in. They have experience doing that, but we haven't figured out yet when we want to use them. Sort of in my mind, it's like, let's do it early. Let's get a really good feel for generally, especially if it's the negative side, what people are sort of kind of most afraid of or fearful about the project, what the outcome that just is not going to be palatable for a lot of people. And then maybe use them again once we've got into concepts, or maybe concepts refinements, to sort of see, we got over the hump, that really hard question, and we showed you some stuff and you hate it, but we've refined it, and then see what the pulse is of the broader community. So that's kind of way out there, but I think it helps us guide the overall process. To your point about specific focus groups, we're trying to tailor to find out who they are, and we're going to get some great feedback from that core group that
Having
we
some
define.
young people on the,
Yeah, we have
going to be helpful.
2 positions that we're making space for. We found that that's just generally a best practice, not to have the under 18 members on their own, have somebody to kind of
Where all the best
go
ideas come
through
from.
it.
I mean,
Yeah,
really, yeah.
yeah.
It affects them more than us.
Oh, yeah.
They're very honest.
I was just going to mention also, we you might have noticed in the community, or when the public involvement strategy, the draft, we do have sort of tables that show ideas for ways that we could engage different populations, and just kind of, there's kind of a toolkit, if you will, that First 40 Feet employs on a lot of their projects, but those can be really specifically catered. So I think once we start to actually, target in on those communities, we can do this more, but just initially we were thinking that targeted outreach, kind of going out and tabling at different events that are in the public, to the extent that we still can, sort of within our within this fall period that we're working before the holidays, but also just kind of acknowledging that different community members have different amounts of commitment that they can sort of provide to this work and trying to meet them where they're at.
That kind of leads to another question I had about, you mentioned providing like regular progress updates on the website. This is going to be a 2-year plus long project, so maintaining that community engagement might be tough for that whole 2 years. In addition to the progress updates on the website, what other tools or resources do you plan to implement to maintain that community engagement over that lengthy kind of 2-year study period?
Yeah, I mean, initially it's newsletters and things that are normally sort of going out to groups. I think if we start building a network, we can help push information through, folks who can reach out to other communities. And it may be that we need a touch point to look at, like, let's say there is a gap in a period of time, or we felt like we haven't had great response in some of the engagement we've done, or we've done a few pop-ups and open houses, but again, we're not seeing a lot. Yeah, and it's like, yeah, let's think about something that we can interject into the process. I don't know what that is, but we're pretty pragmatic. We don't like things to go too dormant ourselves. We've been doing things using QR codes, oddly enough, placing them. This is the project on the pavement. People are walking by there getting ice cream at Salt and Straw, which most people are here till 9 or 10. And they're sitting there. They're just great places to get people. And if you can update the information and it's a quick hit and download for them, those kind of things can actually do pretty well.
Yeah.
My son's on the OPFC, Oregon Premier Football Club team, so I could, I'm there a couple days a week. I can yell at parents out there like, hey, what do you guys think about Foothills? I can do surveys while the kids are practicing. I'm just kidding.
Sometimes we'll do a demonstration project where the plan will be, say, it's going underway of adoption, and then we know that, say, development might not happen for another year or two. We'll fill in that gap by doing, we've painted, like, we've created a Vancouver bike garden, and that's a place for kids to go and like learn how to ride a bike on the street without being on the street. It's like this, it's called the Traffic Garden, if you look it up. That activated the site, which allows you to keep providing information for the project, because they're curious, like, what's happening here? This is an awesome space. It's active next to the park. Interim, it's temporary, but it allows you to continue that conversation with communities because they see things happening. It might not be the thing, but there's activity there. So, and every project we have one of these. We have a demonstration project that we create. We don't know what it is usually until we get into the project, but it usually comes around and it allows us to continue conversation. So that's something that I think could happen, say, a couple months after adoption starts, or when booking group takes on the adoption process and the code amendments, we could start thinking about what can we do to get
Sneak peek.
information out there.
Yeah.
Right. So stay tuned. I think we're always excited to do those types of tactical urbanism projects. So
Sounds exciting.
yeah, good.
Yeah, we really thought that first 40 feet had a huge strength in public involvement, and I think that idea of kind of being really responsive and iterative about how we want to go through this, and just kind of really being mindful of the information that we're receiving and trying to respond to that as directly as we can is a huge strength that we are excited to get going and work with them on.
Yeah, thanks, Will and Jason, for coming down this evening and talking to us and the entire First 40 Feet team. I know in the presentation there's several references, I think, to building on past work or continuing work. And I assume that's the reference to this we've gone through this back in 2011, 2012 with Foothills District Plan. Yeah. And I think we may have talked about this as a group last time. Is there a way for us to educate ourselves in what happened back then and why it may have, I'm going to use the word stalled, I don't know if that's the correct word, but why it stalled then and how it is now? Is there something we can do to educate ourselves to understand that? Well, I assume you all are doing the same thing or have
exactly. We have quite a bit of catch up on that front, and from staff side, there's anxiety there too. So I think that we need that special moment where that daylights and we get a clear understanding of the players that were involved and the process that led to. So, yeah, I mean, the last thing you want to do is repeat and get back into that same vicious cycle. But these are the kind of projects that are going to continue to bring resistance.
Sure.
And it's just the nature of the work. But, yeah, I think the more clear-eyed we are going into things. And the other thing is talking to those folks who are most affected, who may have the most resistance. You've got to bring them in early, and you got to talk often. And that's the only way to get resolution, because otherwise people go into a vacuum and then they just create their spin cycle and they just build a coalition against it, and because they're not sitting in it. But if they're in the room with you and they're talking and they're seeing what you're seeing and what you're learning as you move through the process, and you're sort of checking back in with them, it's kind of hard to keep poking holes at it. I mean, so I've got a lot of scars, but yeah, I still love doing it. And it's worth it. Like, and I know it is for you all too. Like, this is an important time. This is an important thing. And we're all probably going to have to help each other out a little bit as we go along. It's not going to be particularly easy, but
Yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely kind of a disconnect, I think, when people think about the way that project ended and, sort of tensions, I suppose, that led to that project stalling. And we were coming out here, we're excited to move this project forward, kind of cheery faces. And, we do know what we're getting into. We do know that this is going to be a contentious exercise. And, I do think that that's very much something we're mindful of. And we don't necessarily want to rehash everything that happened last time, but we do have a lot to use as a starting point. There was a lot of, especially on the technical side of things, a lot of analysis done that we can still utilize in this effort, as well as just a lot of thinking and planning in that area that may or may not be, translatable to the current context. But that's really kind of our biggest task here, is to be able to use something as a pretty solid starting point for discussion, but to know that will need to be changed as we move forward.
Yeah, thank you. I'd say from my perspective, I don't want to speak for the rest of the commissioners, but as we have future work sessions on this, sort of weaving into them, the concerns of the past and how maybe circumstances have changes and those concerns aren't here, or how we are addressing them differently, or how we're pushing back, again, I think us understanding that collectively would be helpful.
Yeah, so we're not blindsided also if we start.
I think nobody's going to be blindsided.
And that's another kind of argument for using this polling firm as well, so we can kind of go back to the community and, get sort of a statistically significant sample of what people are thinking at a given time, and sort of do that at multiple points throughout the process.
Yeah.
I think it is hard to sort of put your finger in the air and know exactly which way the winds were blowing back in 2012, even as it was happening. But obviously there was, some negative response to what was done at that time. And we can, sort of try to capture that to a degree, but, I think we do, again, want to recognize that this is a new opportunity, I think, to kind of talk about this in a bit of a fresh, with a fresh lens, I suppose.
Yep. Agreed. Thank you.
I have another question. It may not be for you as much, and it may not be appropriate for tonight, but just from my own knowledge, this is all the Foothills District plan is contingent upon moving the wastewater treatment plan. Is that correct?
It's not necessarily contingent on it. Especially the previous iteration of the plan, that was not a component of it. But it is kind of what spurred this latest round of planning, I would say. That sort of relocation from what you can see on the map, that's sort of Area 3, which is where the current Tryon Creek wastewater treatment facility is located. The new site is kind of where you see that dashed area in the yellow zone and sort of Area 1. So,
That's where it'll go?
We did talk about this briefly at a work session, I think, but we didn't see the map, so it's good to visualize it here. But yeah, the idea is that, the plant that's currently taking up all the space that you can see in sort of Area 3 there will occupy much less space. So it's I think going to downsize from like 13 to something like 8 acres. So it'll be much smaller than it was previously, and will open up some space as a result. So that's really a piece of why we're revisiting this here, is to think more holistically and not just kind of plan this wastewater treatment plan in a vacuum. And also, I think if you look back at the 2012 plan, you'd notice that there was a transportation network envisioned that would really, it would be disrupted by the location of this wastewater treatment sort of replacement facility. So we're not gonna be able just to take and sort of stamp that back on this area. We really have to rethink the transit and sort of transportation functionality of this area now that these sort of moves have been happening in recent years.
Are these numbers important still, or is this a historic image?
Just our current drawing, it just, number 1 and 2 are like the most, those are like, that's our proper, site proper. 1 and 2 that's the area we're looking at.
Got it.
3 is, again, that's opening up areas where we can plan. And then 4 potentially as well. So 5 is an influence. 5 is like potential partner influence. Got to pay attention to them. 5 as well, it's like potentially. That's an influence. We could pay attention to that area as well.
But there is no phasing or anything associated
Okay.
with the
And
numbering
then I was wondering
system.
why
Yeah.
5 is in purple and then the area to the right is not any color. Is there a difference?
Well, 5 is sort of, as we think about how we access the site, that's an impact area. In the previous 2012 plan, you all looked at there was some, redesign of that area in terms of including some additional commercial. And so it's not like directly immediately going to be a part of the framework plan, but it's sort of an area of influence, and it's important to think about because that is sort of the front door. It's going to be one of the front doors to the district, and we know how important that connection is to the lake and to the plaza that you already have today. And so that's why that's there. It's sort of, we want to look at the impacts of building the framework for the primary development, but that may provide some opportunities in 5 that we want to look at.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're just kind of looking at sub areas here, but I think it's important to note that we're looking at a study area right now, and you can see that that's a black line that surrounds more than just those sub areas that I was talking about. So I think really just want to point out that part of the project is defining these boundaries, and where specifically we want to focus things like the zoning changes in particular. So I think it's all part of the conversation essentially. So we're not trying to sort of instill any ideas about that quite yet. It's still very early in the process, but we're just trying to sort of break things out and understand them a bit better.
Going back to the treatment plan, we will collaborate with the designers of that facility because we don't want to box ourselves into a corner like you're impacting something, if you're going to future cast it, right? So just working with them, I know that's probably likely the best location, but are there tweaks that we can do to get the ability to have access or circulation? We don't know. We're working through that. So that's Jacobs, right?
Yes, they're working on the design for that treatment plant. Yeah, you can just kind of see though, if you're familiar with the site, there's a lot of sort of topographical features, or maybe not feature, but it drops down pretty steeply before you get down to that, the actual neighborhood itself. There's a lot of kind of winding access paths to get down there. So, we really just want to be as thoughtful about potential access points as possible, and you don't want to really limit yourselves in that conversation either. At least not yet. But this is great to start talking about the actual plan because we've just been talking about planning to plan quite a while. So we're going to be excited when we can actually talk about the site itself and get some ideas.
Are we going to
out on
give
paper.
suggestions to the community of like, here's a menu of things that could go in there? There's sort of like vague parts about it, but are we going to have specifics like we could have a baseball field, we could have a...
I don't think, well, probably not that. We're going to bring Major League Baseball. It's not. There's, I think the first thing you typically start with is the program that you had from the 2012 plan, because a lot of that work was vetted through sort of market analysis, and you had a developer who, generally saw that kind of working, that whatever that density is and mix of uses. And so that's always a good starting point. As areas change, if there's more land than there was before, now we can look at different capacity for development, maybe adding more of something that wasn't there before. But I think, the nexus here, at least I think the way I'm understanding it is, we're trying to create a neighborhood here. And great neighborhoods have a variety of different housing types. They've got great access to parks and open space. They're walkable. There's a grid, a network of streets that you can navigate through. But maybe there's components of a community center or some other things that maybe weren't in the previous plan that maybe now make sense. Maybe the Parks and Rec have been considering some things that we can then roll into that development program that maybe wasn't thought of before. That could be one element. So yeah, like I said, we'll start with sort of one scenario and look at others. The other is sort of how do you create maybe some type of commercial node or sort of destination on the waterfront. Part of the issues here is you don't have the drive-by and accessibility currently, and if the district continues to be sort of a dead end, right, you drive in and you drive out, that has some limitations on the ability to create certain types of synergy of, commercial nodes or neighborhood centers types of things. But, we all know great models of neighborhoods that have all these awesome components that make them so special. Like I live in Southeast Portland and I can walk to a grocery store and I can walk to 15, 20 different restaurants. My kids can walk to school. I can walk to parks. We can bike up to Mount Tabor. And I think we envision this site being able to build in those attributes as well. It's just a complement to the amazing neighborhoods you already have here. This really is just inserting it in as a part of that DNA that is Lake Oswego, which is pretty awesome. We were just walking north of here, and it's absolutely stunning walking through the neighborhoods, and the incense cedars are massively enormous, and just the quality of the environment is really awesome. So it's not like we don't have good bones to look at and emulate. So sorry for going on too long.
No, that's helpful. And it does feel like it kind of falls off a cliff down there.
Yeah,
I know.
it
In a
is
couple
the
ways.
hinterland,
Yep.
sort of.
Yep. Awesome.
Yeah.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, it's definitely something, I guess, that, we're thinking, we want to think big, think outside the box. We don't want to close anything off. But, as the city representative here, I have to know that we do have some plans, I guess, that the city has been talking about with respect to expansion of Foothills Park, as well as, sort of the envisioning in the HPS of utilizing this area to support affordable housing through the urban renewal plan, through TIF funding. So there are some things that we have been talking about specifically, concretely, maybe that either would be related to this area or concretely located in that area. But that's really still pretty flexible. There's still a lot of space to work with here. So nothing is preordained.
I have a question here about your
Yes.
overarching message.
Sure.
In the phraseology here, you have transit friendly. What does that mean?
Access to be able to get on a bus and move around to different parts, whether it's, back to Portland or over to Forest Grove, that living in this neighborhood is going to still give you access to other ways to move around the community. So maybe it was too specific around transit. Maybe it should have been more focused on just the ability to
Well, I'm not trying to
move
pin you
around.
down on anything. I'm just trying
No,
to
I'm-
figure out what's the problem now that needs to be corrected. That's what I'm kind of after.
Yeah, I think some of that, like if I'm going to just, my guilty pleasure on this one is, there isn't really transit serving the district today. There is on the edge, obviously 43 you can get on off, but there isn't something sort of circulating through the site and out that brings it into the fold as it does for the rest of the city. So I'm sort of curious about that component of it. We have TriMet, as a part of our technical advisory committee, but
This is where the MAX line was going to go at some point?
I think the streetcar was
Streetcar,
gonna-
sorry,
was,
yeah, streetcar.
Yeah, that was, I think, a big component of the backlash ultimately that came back on the 2012 plan. Although even the sort of post-streetcar version of the plan was, not
Resisted.
was stalled as well. Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
But no, I just want to point out, transit's actually kind of a necessity here if we want folks to live there, because it's really just in terms of the actual, if we're doing a traffic impact study for this area, it's not going to be able to support that many residences without something besides automobile use. So it really is something that's functional too, that if we want this to be an active sort of livable, walkable, vibrant community, we don't want it to be, we want to make sure that folks can get there and that folks are able to access it, and I think it's a part of the city that could actually benefit from, bus lines that are already in existence and some service that, we do have some good bones in this part of the city that we could benefit from as well. So really just kind of pulling this area into the rest of the downtown and making it more connected, I think is more kind of what we were aiming for there.
Yeah, I would even say mobility is key, like bike. I love to be able to bike in and out of here as well. But thinking outside the box, I'd say you need a water taxi. It takes you from here to Portland to commute. Let's do that.
And access
Varies,
across
yeah.
43 can be difficult. Like if you're here trying to get down to Foothills on foot or by bike.
That's right.
It's a little, so I'm wondering if that'll be part of the plan as well.
100%.
It will need to be, I think that's, we're not going to be able to solve all these sort of larger connectivity issues potentially in terms of, all the sort of transit pieces here. But when it comes to just getting across 43, I think that's one of the biggest things that we could really sort of bite off. And I think we could probably make some really great recommendations on that sort of front. So I'm not trying to promise too much here, but I think that is absolutely critical to the success of this.
Eric said we're getting a tram.
We are going to make that our number one priority.
Crossing 43. That's what
Crossing 43, making that doable and accessible in multiple locations is absolutely the goal. We will work hard.
I can tell you're not done.
Second question I
Yeah.
have is, you've got in here inclusive neighborhood, and I'd just like to hear what you think about that.
Yeah, I mean, when I think about an inclusive neighborhood, it's a variety of housing types and people who live in the neighborhood. I live next to this neighborhood called Ladd's Addition, and it's such an interesting neighborhood. It's got these crazy diagonal streets, and it has these big oval roundabouts and these rose gardens sprinkled in everywhere. But the initial concept, and it was built during the streetcar era. And so one edge of the neighborhood sort of evolved, and it had a few commercial storefronts. It had some of the apartment buildings along Hawthorne Boulevard. It had some homes that were sort of like the 4-unit apartment buildings next to the single-family homes. They had some kind of mansion-type homes, but they also had a number of sort of workforce housing homes and smaller duplexes, and they were all sort of integrated in the neighborhood. And it evolved over time, and they started with the first products that were the best sells and generating income for that developer. But it was a really kind of a thoughtful process. They had a school integrated into the neighborhood as well. And so I sort of see that personally as a model that I've seen be successful. And when I think of inclusive, I think of that, so that there's a variety of opportunities for a range of people to live in the neighborhood. I think it's kind of the bottom line.
Well, for me as well, for us, when we talk to people, we ask the question, what makes you feel safe? What makes you feel comfortable? What makes you feel welcome? What brings you to neighborhoods? How do you also what makes you feel uncomfortable? And we want to, especially talking to cultural groups, making it feel like it's theirs. They have ownership in it. Like they feel welcome, and it takes a long time to get there, but there's a lot of conversations we should have on that topic, which we try to have designed to where people feel like I could live here, depending on where their background or socioeconomic. That's also the goal: inclusivity in housing types and affordability, but also the sense of ownership and welcome here. So that's all. That is a fun journey for us.
I take it you probably want us as a commission to go down there and see for ourselves, don't you?
That would be excellent. I mean, I think there will be lots of opportunities for you all to
Field trip.
participate in engagement events, but that is a very, very great idea for a potential planning commission work session in the future. Yeah, field trip, I guess. Maybe we don't have to call it a work session, but I think it is critical to go down there and see what's going on and get a read for the land, especially the sort of existing wastewater treatment facility. It's really interesting just how much space it takes up and the sort of angles that you can see based on the topography. And it is, I'm not sure I'd call it hidden necessarily, but it's surprising how much land it takes up for what you actually see when you're down in that area. It is, yeah, it's kind of deceiving in some ways. So it is helpful to go down and see the mix of uses that are in this area and the kind of potential challenges, especially the railroad going right through there, and kind of, in addition to 43, that is another significant sort of barrier to access to this area, and just kind of how all those things interplay. Even just turning, into this neighborhood, you'll get a really good sense of kind of, some of the barriers that we're going to be facing with access, and it's not the most intuitive part of the city, I would say. So, explore.
Okay, commissioners, any other questions or discussion points? Okay, thanks again, Will and Jason. Really appreciate your time this evening and for walking us through this, and looking forward to partnering with you
Thank you.
for quite some time.
Perfect.
Thanks.
Agenda item number 8, other business.
Yeah, I just have one item of other business. It's actually an opportunity to have a member of the commission participate further in the process that Jessica is leading right now to amend our tree regulations. So we had a work session on this not long ago. I guess it was back on the 28th of July, so 2 work sessions ago. But yeah, I think we talked about how there might be more opportunities for participation outside of just the venue of the commission. This would be a small kind of virtual focus group with other members of boards and commissions in the city to weigh in. So I just wanted to let you all know that there is an opportunity for one of you. You don't necessarily have to. It's not like we need somebody from the planning commission or else. So you don't have to necessarily decide right now, but I will forward this on to all of you after our meeting, and you can respond via email, or obviously if you want to just volunteer right now, that's okay too, but no pressure. But yeah, I think it would be a great opportunity to weigh in on the tree regulations if that's something that you felt like you had some knowledge and kind of a depth of expertise about, where you have some opinions to offer the process. And that's it. I don't know, Jessica, if you want to say more about kind of what you're looking for.
There we go. Is it on? There it is. It's just as Erik said, this isn't a requirement, so you shouldn't feel pressure, but I just wanted to extend the opportunity because we will have a focus group, which I would say is probably not going to be more than 5 to 8 members of our boards and commissions. And I know you all just had a study session on this, but if you feel like you have some burning issues with the tree code or other tree regulations that you want to talk about, or you want to give us feedback, you're more than welcome to participate in the focus group. So just reach out to Erik or I, and we're happy to add you to the list. And that would be happening in September. And if you get in touch with me, we'll get more information on when and where that will happen. And it's just a one-time focus group meeting.
Do you have a date on that?
It'll be in September, but once we get our focus group members together, then we'll schedule it. And we tend to do a polling, like a doodle poll, to find a time that works the best for most people. So, yeah.
I'd like to do that.
Okay.
Go.
All right, well, I guess.
Thanks, Jim.
I'm
going to say asking a question is volunteering here, so you're in, Jim. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, item number 9, schedule review.
All right, so we're now through August, and so talking about what we'll be discussing in the fall at the commission. We'll start on September 8th. At our next meeting, we'll be conducting a hearing on the proposed comprehensive plan amendments for fair housing policy. Shortly after that, 2 weeks later, the second meeting in September, we'll have a work session on the rezoning for housing project, kind of similarly in a place where we're applying for grants and have scoped a bit of the project. So just wanted to tell you a little bit about that, as well as considering findings, if all goes well at the hearing for that comprehensive plan amendment on fair housing. On October 13th, we are scheduled for a hearing on home occupation standards. So it's taken a little bit of some time for us to get that back to hearing. You haven't discussed that since back in early June, but that will come back to you on October 13th for a hearing, and we'll be distributing those materials in advance as well. And the second meeting in October, we'll be considering the findings for those home occupation amendments, as well as, again, if all goes well at the hearing, as well as talking about some updates that we've received on our process to request an exemption to the mandatory adjustments provisions of Senate Bill 1537, which we talked a bit with you about in the context of the HPS work, but have given you some sort of periodic updates on this. Last year, mostly, we talked about this, but the city submitted essentially a application to be exempt from these mandatory adjustment requirements, and we were granted that exemption, but there are a lot of conditions that go along with that and some sort of nuances that we should all be aware of and potential code changes that might be required there. So Johanna Hasty, our planning manager, will come in and talk with you all about those at a work session on the 27th of October. So lots of content to get through. I think, we have some pretty big projects underway. Obviously, we're talking about these tree regulation amendments that will be a large undertaking, but HB 2138 in general, the sort of recent state legislation that has been passed related to middle housing specifically will require us to come up with kind of a plan for getting more amendments passed in a roughly the similar timeframe of what we're talking about here prior to 2027. So, we've got a lot on our docket here, but we also have more things kind of coming that we're still kind of incorporating into the schedule. So I think, we're in this kind of down period where we're talking about all these grant applications that we have in, but things are going to get going pretty quick. So in the fall is when hopefully, the rubber will start hitting the road a little bit more at the commission, but I think we have a fast and furious 2026 ahead of us as well.
Okay. Great. Thank you, Eric. Nothing else? We're adjourned.